Greetings and welcome everybody. Aquaba. Hope everyone is doing well on this Sunday. We hope you are reaching your highest level of mental, physical, and spiritual health as always. And we're very happy that you wanted to join us today for this version of Our Ancestors' Voices, where we talk about Malcolm X and African Liberation Day. So thank you very much for coming in. We appreciate you taking this hour with us, and we look forward to this opportunity to discuss this very important event, African Liberation Day, and Malcolm X's relationship to Pan-Africanism and African Liberation Day. We always give thanks to the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. We're so thankful for them allowing us to exist in these Western Hemisphere territories for the last 530 years. And we stand shoulder to shoulder with them. We sit shoulder to shoulder with them in their struggle for liberation and the regaining of their lands back. These lands belong to them. So we stand with them in that struggle. And we also, of course, give respect to our African ancestors who are the reason that we live and breathe today. And so we're so thankful for their sacrifice on our behalf. And we thank you for joining us today for this very important topic, Malcolm X and African Liberation Day. We will start with our introductions and go into that, and then we will get started with our program. So first, again, Our Ancestors' Voices is sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party, the AAPRP. And the APRP is a revolutionary, independent, mass, Pan-African political party that is not based in New York or Chicago or Los Angeles or Houston or San Francisco. It's based in Africa, the national home for all people of African descent. And we believe that until Africa is free, no African anywhere on earth, whether it's in the 120, any of the 120 countries that we live on, is ever going to be free. So our basis of work is around the objective of Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism, which we define as one unified socialist Africa, one unified socialist Africa. That is our objective. And our work to achieve Pan-Africanism can be outlined in Kwame Nkrumah's landmark book, The Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, that you see on the right-hand side of the screen there at the top. And if you study that book, you will understand the work of the All African People's Revolutionary Party. If you don't know the contents of that book, you will not understand the work of the All African People's Revolutionary Party. So if you don't know the book, don't talk about what we are and aren't doing because you don't know. So get the book and find out, or reach out to us, which will explain how to do that. And we're happy to explain what we're about. Okay. Our Ancestors' Voices is hosted each week by APRP organizers and father-daughter Shakura Umi and myself, Ajamu Umi. And we are happy to actually be in the same location. So I'm going to move away from the microphone and turn it over to Shakura to get us started.
Greetings, everyone. What's up? I'm so happy to be here in Sacramento, and we hope that you are well. I also just want to give an echo to this idea of showing homage and giving thanks to our indigenous comrades who allowed us to be on their land for as many of these generations and all these years as they have done. I actually drove from Memphis to Sacramento with a good friend of mine and my little puppy. And of course, driving through New Mexico, driving through Oklahoma City, driving through Arizona, you're just constantly reminded of how much oppression and suffrage our indigenous people have been through. And at one point I even said to my friend, I just was like, it's making me very emotional just to think of all the intensities that they've experienced over the years, to think about all the dehumanizing treatment, to think of all the unjustification that our indigenous families have experienced. And, she kept telling me, she said, well, we're going back home. You're going to be home. You're going to be in Sacramento. You're going to be home. And I struggled with my friend and I said, well, my home is not Sacramento. My home is Africa. And my friend identifies as indigenous and African and said, well, technically, this is my land. And I said, and you're making my point. That's why it's not my home. Okay. So we laughed about that and that was that. But I share that for two reasons. First, to acknowledge our indigenous families for allowing us to still be here. We thank you all. And we are trying our best to share with other Africans the same ideology that this is not their home. I'm trying my hardest. And I thank you all so much for being patient with us, for allowing us to be here, for working with us, and for understanding that for Africans that understand the importance of organizing, we understand that we have a responsibility to make sure you get your land back, because we know that you have our back and you want us to get ours back too. And we can't thank you enough for that. This relationship that we have is going to be forever strong. And I'm going to die letting people know that this is not my home by any means necessary. So thank you all for your beautiful land. Thank you for sharing it with us. And we are going to take down the oppressor so that you can get it back by any means necessary. So just wanted to start with that and just move right into Malcolm, our comrade Malcolm. And so we start by thinking about how Malcolm was constantly trying to help people understand that there were serious problems in terms of dehumanizing treatment that people were facing throughout the world. And it started off with focusing on Harlem and things like that. But eventually he started to understand that Africans everywhere were under attack. He started doing speeches in Harlem, and then he would invite people who were doing work with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or who were doing work with other organizations that were somewhat based in the southern region of the US, and invite these people to come and speak. And in hearing them talk about their experiences in Mississippi and Memphis and other parts of Arkansas, there was this drawing connection that Malcolm started to see, where it's not just Africans that are being attacked in New York, New Jersey, and in other parts of the East Coast. Africans are being attacked all over the world. And he started to make those connections, especially hearing Africans who were doing organizing work in other parts of the world coming to Harlem and saying, we are experiencing police brutality, we are experiencing racism, we are experiencing sexism, we are experiencing inabilities to even exist without being harassed by people left and right. And for those Africans that weren't from that particular part of the state or the US, they would think to themselves, wait a minute, that sounds very familiar to my experiences. I'm experiencing racism. I'm experiencing being attacked. I'm experiencing police brutality and harassment. So there starts to be this overwhelming connection, right? There starts to be this overwhelming drawing theme, if you will, where Malcolm is starting to highlight slowly but surely, because of this division with the Nation of Islam, he's starting to draw more connections and starting to have that come up in his speeches. He's not afraid to talk more about the experiences, and he's trying to hold all of us accountable to help us understand that part of that means he has to help us unlearn what capitalism and imperialism has taught us. So we all know about these famous speeches where he, highlights, that both are bad, the fox as well as the wolf. The only difference is one will stab you in the back facing you, whereas the other will stab you in the back behind you, right? So this idea of drawing on that parallel to help us understand it's not about being a Democrat or Republican, because both are not for people, right? Both are to dehumanize people as much as possible. As I just said, one just smiles in your face and has a bigger smile than the other. So you're more clear about it. And the one organization just may not show their white supremacy Confederate flag as highly as the other, or a division, right? So Malcolm was helping us to understand that. Malcolm was not afraid to help us see that we can't expect to rely on the same system that has oppressed us. And, he would make very direct and very obvious statements like, if you're dumb enough to think that the same oppressor who took you from your home, which was Africa, and brought you over here, is going to somehow turn around and give you what you need to exist in this world, especially now that you have no purpose. Your whole purpose of coming here was to help pick resources, cotton and other resources like that, to manage the kitchen, to help the plantation owners do what they needed to do. Well, now that slavery, in theory, quote unquote, is over, you have no purpose, which means now you need to go, because you're not serving a purpose. And so we think about Malcolm and how there was always this Pan-African bloodline, if you will, that was running through his veins. But it just took him a moment to get to that point. And it's interesting how, because he started practicing this devotion and connection to his principles, many people who didn't know what that dedication looked like started attacking him. They started attacking him because he continued to show his commitment to principles. He continued to be valued. He continued to be principled and how he went about carrying himself. I'll never forget one of his speeches. And again, you all know you can access some of his speeches on Spotify. So one of his speeches was talking about how this was the night after his house had been bombed. And he indicated he was so self-conscious about his appearance the night that he showed up to give this speech. And he literally says at the beginning of the speech, you'll have to forgive me. I don't usually dress like this. I usually, try to put more care into how I look. But as you all may know, my house was bombed last night and I had to get the family out and the girls, we had to get out. And so I only had time to grab one suit. And so I always really appreciate hearing him start the beginning of that speech, because you can tell that he has an investment in his appearance, which is important to him based on values that he has learned from the Nation of Islam. And he speaks to that as well. He speaks about how even though he's no longer affiliated with the organization, he will always cherish the nuggets that he was able to take from them in terms of carrying yourself with dignity, being truthful, being honest, being credible, and having the ability to back up what you're saying by giving facts and evidence to support that. And so even with the division, I think it's really interesting that we look at how Malcolm was still able to morph, if you will, from the Nation of Islam, but also developing more of a Pan-African lens. And so it's really important to think about that, because clearly that's how you know that this political education that he's developing from a more African-centered lens is really developing and growing from there. And so just looking at that and seeing that, it explains a lot as we then think about his ability to think about how we can move forward into more of a Pan-African ideology, right? And so then we think about how, he had no problem, especially admitting when he needed to learn something new. I think that's one of the things that I'll miss most about him was his humility, how he would say everything that he did have access to, but he would also say, well, that's something I'm still researching. I think, we talk so much in this society about how people are trained to be forced to just pretend like they have all the information. And, it's all about showboating. It's all about maintaining appearances. It's all about, quote unquote, keeping up with the Joneses. But if you don't know something and you're willing to learn and seek that information or that education, that actually doesn't make you weak. That actually makes you strong, because first, you're humble enough to admit that you can always still learn something new, which means you're not perfect, and that's okay. And B, it allows people to really see that you have the ability, you have the intentionality, and you have the skill set to find that information. A lot of us don't even realize how important it is to actually know how to do research. A lot of us don't see the importance of that, which means we're not interested in growing our minds. And that's exactly what capitalism wants. Capitalism doesn't want you to grow your mind. Capitalism doesn't want you to think for yourself. Capitalism does not want you to start to critique and to start to think about things and to question things. Those are all really bad behaviors in capitalism. And if you start doing that, then you're going to become a target, because then capitalism is going to start to understand you're not maintaining the principles of capitalism. You're actually shaking up or rocking the boat, if you will. And so you're now a threat to capitalism. And we've talked over and over about that definition. So just in case folks are not clear, capitalism is all about maintaining private entities so that they can continue to build and promote wealth for those private corporations and entities. So if you become a threat where you no longer let private entities build money and wealth off of your exploitation, that's a problem for capitalism. And you got to go, because they can't allow you to stop their operation. The whole purpose is to protect the private means of corporations making money. That's the whole purpose of that. So Malcolm understood that in pushing against capitalism, that meant pushing against the same system that was teaching us basically how to be good slaves. That's basically what it boils down to. Again, increasing political education is one of the best ways that you can resist the oppression, one of the best ways that you can resist the exploitation. And so we have to think about that and think about how that shows up in our principles and our work. We see how that showed up with Malcolm. The very first time that he went to Cairo to speak, it changed his life. And he talked about that when he came back to speak in Harlem. He talked about how he now understands what's happening, my brothers and sisters. These are his words, of course. I'm humbly trying to do my best to echo him, but he's saying what's happening, my brothers and sisters, in Harlem, and what's happening in Memphis, and what's happening in San Francisco is also happening in the Congo. It's also happening in Chad. It's also happening in Niger. It's happening in Haiti. It's happening in parts of Venezuela. It's happening in Canada. We really have to understand that. And he even breaks it down and says, when I went to Egypt, that's really when I got a really better understanding of this. When I started meeting with leaders and different Pan-Africanists who have been following the work of Africans everywhere, we started to draw conclusions that this is happening all over the world. And so we really have to take this look and give a bigger lens in how we're thinking about this, because We can't just resist what's happening to Africans in the US and not think about how the same exact mistreatment is happening to Africans everywhere, which is why Malcolm started adopting this Pan-African lens, because he understood, and I hope that the rest of us do that are on this call, that you cannot stop this system of oppression unless you address the oppression that Africa, the continent, has faced. So Malcolm started incorporating those pieces of the puzzle into his speeches. He started talking about the theft of resources. He started talking about the coltan and the cobalt. He started talking about those things and helping people understand that that's where that comes from, is Africa. A lot of our people don't even know what those resources are, let alone what they do or where they are from, which means they don't understand that their continent, if they are African, is producing those resources, which means Africans everywhere should have some say in how those resources are being used, distributed, disseminated, what have you. But that's what happens when you don't have power, is you don't get to make the calls to decide how things happen. And that also means that if you're not in a position of power because you don't have your land or access to your land, then that means the person who is in power gets to decide that they also don't want to respect you. So again, I help Africans everywhere by understanding the whole reason that you are oppressed is because your continent that you descend from is not respected as well. We must understand that. It's very, very important. I would argue the same goes for Palestinian folks, because occupied Palestine is not in their possession. I would argue the same goes for our indigenous folks, because this land is not in their possession. This is why people are disrespecting it, littering, and doing what they're doing now to it, because they have no respect and they don't even understand that it's the indigenous people's land. So we have to continue to push that forward. Malcolm is expecting us to carry on not just his legacy, but the legacy of any Pan-Africanist who is appalled and just completely dumbfounded that we are at this section and stage of our lives that we are. It is up to us to understand how we need to fix that and do better. You know, we think about how Malcolm's commitment allowed the rest of us to open up this window. He literally passed the torch to us. And as far as I'm concerned, he is rolling over in his grave, extremely peed off, because we didn't listen to anything he said to do. We didn't take the breadcrumbs that he left for us. It's up to us to make a difference. And part of that means resisting capitalism and understanding how to really find the true answers, meaning in an organization that's working for justice. Malcolm was truly getting to that level. And as we know, he was taken too soon because he was on that path. So we should follow in his footsteps. We shouldn't just honor him on his birthday and not acknowledge all that he set up for us. He's expecting us to do better. That's why we need to join an organization working for justice. That's why we need to speak out when we see injustices taking place. And more importantly, that's why if you have an indigenous friend and if you are African, you need to stop using the word home, and you need to start asking your indigenous friend for permission to stay on their land, because you need to get back to your homeland, which is Africa. Join an organization working for justice. Continue to keep the legacy of Malcolm and all Pan-Africanists in your heart. Forward ever, backwards never.
Yay! Thank you, Shakura.
Thank you.
Dap you in
I know,
public.
right?
You
Yes,
know, we
thank
can
you,
do
sir.
that. That's
Thank
cool
you.
to do. And appreciate you and everything you said. Ashe, Akshay. And so we want to just continue by examining Malcolm's example. And just want to, you know, we've been having technical problems the last couple of weeks. You know, we've been doing this broadcast every week for a couple of years now. And the last couple of weeks we've had issues. I don't know, not accusing anybody of anything because I have no evidence, but it's just really strange. But we apologize for that. And we will certainly straighten that out so that we can be on Facebook. We're just on YouTube right now. And there's a good number of people watching on YouTube, and we appreciate you. But we want to ensure that we're on the other platforms as well, and we will figure that out. But for the show, the struggle continues, the luta continua, right? So we want to talk about some elements of Malcolm as we honor him on his 97th born day, May 19th, 2022. And also, since African Liberation Day is coming May 25th, we want to show the connections between the two because they're both greatly connected. And so let's talk about Malcolm's statement that he made about the chickens coming home to roost. And if you don't know that story, on December 1st, 1963, a mere, 8 days after John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas, here in the United Snakes of America, And this nation was grappling with the fact their president had just been assassinated. Malcolm was asked the question after he gave a presentation what he thought about it. And he gave the response that he was a farm boy. And when he was growing up, chickens would leave and they would always come back home. And he made the analogy that whenever something goes around, it comes around. If you're African, you know, that's an old African proverb. What goes around comes around. And so he said that to the reporters, and he talked about how he had engaged in that analogy because he was trying to make the point that, as Shakur mentioned, the US's criminal behavior in the Congo and all throughout Africa, in Vietnam, everywhere else, was the violence that America perpetuated around the world was reflected in the violence that happened against John F. Kennedy. That was his statement. It's irrefutable statement if you know the history. And you also know, you know, he got in trouble with Elijah Muhammad for making this. He was going to be in trouble with the nation anyway. I mean, if you know how to examine human evolution, you know that the man, and you know this history that I'm talking about, you know that the man knew all the ministers in the nation were ordered not to speak on John F. Kennedy's assassination because Elijah Muhammad was worried that it would create a backlash against the Nation of Islam. So for Malcolm to respond that way, he wasn't concerned about backlash. He had a real yearning to tell the truth. And that's what he did on December 1st, 1963. And any serious revolutionary and even any person of consequence, of moral aptitude, is always going to tell the truth and live the truth despite the consequences. And that's the kind of person that Malcolm was. That's why we respect him, because that's the kind of person he was, even though a lot of us aren't that way. That's why we respect him. And so don't give me this nonsense about he wanted to get back in the Nation of Islam. I mean, anybody that has a relationship that falls apart, you go back and forth. That's just how we are as human beings. But clearly, if you look at his actions, he clearly had gone beyond what the Nation of Islam was talking about. And what he said on December 1st, 1963 was a clear example of that, of his evolving revolutionary consciousness. You know, I have tons of respect for the Nation of Islam. When I was a child in the inner city in San Francisco, they were the only people who came to talk to us. So I don't care what your problem is with them. I'm not going to sit with you and listen to you criticize it. You wouldn't even have walked through Hunters Point in San Francisco. You wouldn't even have driven through Hunters Point in San Francisco. And those Africans were out on the street talking to us as youth. So nobody is perfect, but I respect them for that, because I wouldn't be here if it were not for them. They were the first people that gave me some kind of understanding that something was wrong. And so I respect that about them, but clearly I can recognize that they were not a revolutionary organization, nor are they today. They never have been, and they more than likely never will be. And that's not a throwing shade at them. That's just objective truth. And the point is that this man, Malcolm X, was evolving towards becoming a revolutionary Pan-Africanist. So his framework just got to the point where it just no longer fit within the framework of the Nation of Islam. That's not a knock against them. That's not a knock against him. That's just objective truth. And that's what he was talking about when he did that. And so also, you know, his framing of our people as Africans. And if you want to understand that clearly, you should read the book, The Final Speeches of Malcolm X. The Final Speeches of Malcolm X. And this book is exactly as its title. It's the last 11 speeches that Malcolm gave in February 1965 before he was taken from us, in his physical form. And the importance of that, and there's another book called The Last Speeches of Malcolm X. Don't confuse the two, because that book is not the final speeches, it's just some of the final speeches. But the final speeches, it's a red cover book with Malcolm's picture on it. That's the one that has the 11 last speeches he gave publicly. And if you read those speeches, all he's talking about is Pan-Africanism in those speeches. He's not talking about the white man as the devil. He had gone beyond that rhetoric. He was talking about Africans need Africa. He was talking about anybody that's a capitalist is a bloodsucker. So don't give me this nonsense. That's what he said. The book is of his speeches. This is what he said. They're all recorded too. You want to actually hear him say it. If you spent the amount of time I have researching this man over the last 50 years of my life, almost 50 years, then you would know that all these speeches are out there. So this is clearly what he was talking about. And anybody that says capitalism, when you find capitalism, quoting him, you'll find a bloodsucker. That's not somebody that is, well, all we need is black businesses. That's not somebody that's going to have that perspective. He's gone beyond that. And that's another evidence, proof of his evolving revolutionary consciousness. And again, his framing of us as Africans. And I believe that Malcolm was one of the most articulate spokespersons at taking complex international phenomenon and breaking it down in everyday language that everybody can understand, that people on the street can understand, that workers can understand, that peasants can understand, that everybody can understand. I don't know of anyone any better at doing that than El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, Malcolm X. And I can tell you with great pride, I've spent my whole life learning from his tactical approach and trying to learn how to do what he did, take complex subjects and break them down in ways that everybody can understand. Because if you can't do that, what's the point? A lot of people can read literature and regurgitate what they read. But if you can't take that literature and break it down in a way so that it provides something that can help people make changes, it doesn't have any value. And this man did that. And so myself and millions of others have worked to emulate that model. And it's a very positive model. So when he talked about Africans and gave the definition of when a cat has kittens in the oven, you don't call them biscuits. That is an ingenious way. Even when I use that today, people are still like, oh, okay, they get it. They understand what we're talking about when we say that. So it's a very important tactical way of making an irrefutable argument. The point being that just because you're born in the United States, that cannot define who you are. Just because you're born in Brazil, that cannot define who you are. You have to take our common history and culture and combine those things and come up with an analysis about who we are. Because if you don't do it like that, like Malcolm said, you'll be confused into thinking that you came over here on the Mayflower. That's what you're thinking. A lot of us think that. We evaluate, you hear it all the time. We evaluate ourselves and we compare ourselves to other colonized people. We do it all the time. Well, how come the Asians have this? Like, we do that all the time. And we do that because we're confused about who we are. This country was not built. Yes, the Asian people did a lot of menial labor. They did tremendous work on the railroads. They were exploited doing that. But the framework and the concept of capitalism was not built on Asian people in the Western Hemisphere. That was built on you, African, and your people. That's who built that. That's who that was stolen from. And that's where the wealth from our labor went to build up this empire. So you cannot compare yourself to anybody else. You cannot compare yourself to even other colonized people. The only thing that you can do is look at our history and understand who we are and understand the unique experience we have of being a people where this entire empire's power has been built on stealing everything we got. So Richard Pryor was a comedian, but he made a joke he talked about how brothers hold their genitals. And he talked about the white people see that and they say, well, why do you guys hold your things? And he said, because you done took everything else, MF, and we be checking. And it's a joke, but it's 100% accurate. It's 100% accurate because our mother was stolen from us. We're over here, we don't even know who our mother is, most of us. You go to any African that hasn't engaged in any kind of struggle to understand these concepts and just tell them you're African. You're African. I know because I do it all the time. You're African. No, I'm not. They'll be ready to kill you for calling them that. Even in 2022, they'll be ready to kill you. They got to at least put that American on the end of it. I'm an African American, because then now they got the white man system behind them. So now they got prestige. They can handle that. But just to be called an African, that's an insult to a lot of people, because these people have convinced us that their empire is better than who we are and our history. And so Malcolm deconstructed all of that by just saying clearly, a cat having kittens in the oven doesn't make the kittens biscuits. No matter what we want to believe, the world is not what we want it to believe. It is what it is. And we are African people. And that's what he was saying. And that is irrefutable and a very valuable lesson to us. And then his dedication and commitment to living his ideals and developing his revolutionary Pan-Africanist principles. You know, calling it, not only just calling himself an African, but doing the political work to connect his work to the worldwide Pan-African struggle, focusing on going to Africa as he did twice the last year he was alive. And as Shakur mentioned, building relationships with genuine Pan-Africanist revolutionaries. That's what he did. You know, you want to hear people talk about, well, what did Kwame Nkrumah do? What did Sekou Touré do? You know, these relationships were built. Malcolm was treated like a diplomat when he visited these countries. And these are poor countries, especially Guinea. But every country in Africa is poor. But these are poor countries that could have used the resources that the United Snakes had to offer. But these are principal people we're talking about. We're talking about people like Kwame Nkrumah and Sekou Touré. And they were not concerned about comfort. They were concerned about justice. So they gave Malcolm X diplomatic status, which they knew when they did that would do nothing except be received as a slap in the face by this government. And so if you think it's a coincidence that Malcolm X was assassinated on February 21st, 1965, and Kwame Nkrumah's government was overthrown on February 24th, 1966, then I got some dirty land I want to sell you that I've never seen, and I need cash up front if you're that gullible, because I can tell you that this was a concerted campaign to break up this work that was happening between all of these people, this work that was designed to bring about Pan-Africanism. Malcolm wasn't working that last year to expose the white man as the devil. He named his organization the Organization of Afro-American Unity. And we have to say that because a lot of us today, well, the white man is the devil. We're still on that. We're still on that. And I don't know why you are, because I don't want to give them any supernatural status. White people ain't supernatural. I've worked with too many of them. I've known too many of them to see that in many instances, they're not capable to even do what we can do in our oppressed state. The minute something bad happens to them, they fall apart, a lot of them, because they're not used to dealing with the adverse circumstance. They better get used to it, because they're going to experience that a whole lot more in the days that lie ahead. But up to this point, they've been accustomed to a society that basically fundamentally more or less caters to them. So they're nothing supernatural about white people, nothing whatsoever. And so Malcolm wasn't on that kick. He had gone past that. Even though most of us, like Shakur said, we're not really checking what Malcolm was saying. We want his picture on our desk. You know, we want that. We want his picture on our wall, but we're not really looking at the principles that he represented to live our lives based on that print. Most of us ain't trying to do that. So we're missing that whole point of what he was fundamentally doing in that last year of his life. We're missing that. And so that's what we want to talk about, because that's exactly what African Liberation Day, the principles of African Liberation Day are about, are these revolutionary Pan-Africanist principles that we're using the life of Malcolm X to illustrate to you that we need to take on a collective level. It can't just be Malcolm that has these principles, because they'll do what they did. They'll take him out. They'll take any individual out, but they can't kill all of us. That's why African Liberation Day is a reflection of those collective revolutionary Pan-Africanist principles. And so if we really want to learn from Malcolm, if we really love Malcolm, we would take Malcolm's life, as Shakur said, and we would use it to shape what we do. So another example of that was Malcolm's developing relationship, not only with African revolutionaries like Nkrumah, Sekou Touré, Gamal Abdul Nasser, Julius Nyerere, etc., and so forth, but also his relationship with revolutionaries around the world, like the socialist Cuban Revolution. Malcolm X organized a meeting with Fidel Castro in 1960 in Harlem at the Hotel Teresa. He convinced Elijah Muhammad, he was in the nation still at that time, but clearly him doing that is another piece of evidence to show that he was moving beyond the rhetoric of the Nation of Islam. The Nation of Islam is not a socialist organization. They don't support socialist revolutions. It's just a fact, they don't. So the fact that he wanted to, Malcolm, have this meeting with Fidel Castro when Castro was embarrassing the capitalist government. You know, the United Nations is in New York, and they say that it's international territory, but they banned the Cuban delegation from staying on the United Nations grounds. But Fidel Castro's been smarter than all the 8 presidents in office from, I guess it's 8, I don't keep count because I don't pay attention, they're all the same to me. But from Kennedy all the way through Obama, all the presidents in between that, he was smarter than all of them put together. So he made a career out of outsmarting US presidents, Fidel Castro did. So when they denied him access to the United Nations, he went and camped out with his delegation in Central Park in New York. Well, that was embarrassing to the US, made him look stupid. So they were trying to get him hotels in. Oh, we got hotels now. We found hotels now for you. And he was like, no, we'd rather camp out in the park. We want to be in Harlem, the Harlem part of Central Park. That's where they were. He said, we want to be with the oppressed people in America. That made America look stupid on the world. So that shows you how dumb they are. You think they're so smart. Shows you how stupid they are. So Castro was a genius. So he did that. And Malcolm was a genius. So Malcolm's like, well, Premier Castro, why don't you come to Harlem and stay here and meet with us? So they invited them up there. They had a committee of people. They voted Malcolm one of the spokespeople. And Malcolm had a meeting. And the meeting was about broadening these relationships. That's what it was about. That's why they met, to do that. So Malcolm understood that it was important to build relationships with socialist revolutionaries like Fidel Castro. He was not trying to create meetings with the CEO of Toyota, like a lot of you would be trying to do. He wasn't trying to make meetings with the CEO of Apple, like a lot of us today. Well, we need to have a meeting. He wasn't like Ice Cube trying to meet with Trump or Biden to work out a deal for us. That's not what Malcolm was. I'm saying this because it's 60 years later and we still are confused. Well, Ice Cube, he trying to do something. He had the whatever it was, the Negro plan, whatever they called it, with Trump and Biden. I mean, what kind of not? And then when it comes to Castro, well, who is Fidel Castro? He was a dictator. In 2022, we still talk like that. You may as well just go to the hardware store and buy a bucket of white paint and paint yourself white, because you're thinking, that's what you're manifesting when you're thinking, when you articulate foolishness like that. I mean, we've got to do better. These people gave their lives so that we can know better. So we've got to do better, you all. We got to stop talking so much. Stop talking so much. We talk so much all the time. And we know we haven't read one book, haven't traveled anywhere, don't know one liberation movement, can't even tell anybody what kind of roaches in our house. We don't even know that, but we know everything. We don't even know the origin of the roaches in our house. Somebody, what kind of roach is it? Well, I don't know, ghetto roach. We don't even know, but yet we know everything. We got to stop this arrogance, you all, and get to work. That's what this man was doing with his life. And you can't just put a picture up of him. You got to emulate what he was doing. So the budding relationship, I'm going to get back on track, but you know, we got to talk. I mean, we got to talk truth, right? We got to be realistic, because, and the only reason why I'm talking like this is because nobody that knows me can say that, well, he talked about Malcolm, but he never tried to live based on those principles. Nobody that knows me can say that about me. So I am not telling anybody else to do anything that I don't give my best. I'm not perfect either, but I give my best effort to do. We got to try. You won't see me sitting around in 2022 and beyond. Well, we need to arrange a meeting with Chrysler. I mean, what kind of nonsense is that? We need to if we could just get a meeting with Elon Musk. I mean, you got to be out of your mind. I don't want to have no meeting with them. I want to walk right out over those people's chests and take back what they stole from. I don't have nothing. I don't negotiate with terrorists. I don't want to talk to those people. About what? There's nothing to talk about. We need to take back, organize and take back what they stole from us. That's all I need those people for, to take back what they stole from us. You got to be out your mind sitting there meeting with them. I remember some people here a couple of years, they're like, we're having a meeting. Where is that? At the police station. I'm like, y'all out your damn, what African goes voluntarily to a police station? You got to be, I don't know what kind of Africans you are, but I don't go I don't even go involuntary to a police station. I'm certainly not going to go violent. Yeah, I'm going to drive myself to the police. That shows you how sick we are, that we think like that. So Malcolm's budding relationship with international socialist revolutionaries was key, you all, key to his work. And Malcolm's position as a respected spokesperson for African people in the US made him a valuable part of this emerging international revolutionary movement. I'm trying to tell you, in a span of 3 years, we lost Malcolm. We lost Sukarno in Indonesia. We lost Mobito Keito in Mali. Che Guevara was assassinated. All of this happened in a sphere of 3 years. And all of these people I just named were key people to this budding revolutionary solidarity around the world. And you know, this government has made hundreds of attempts to assassinate Fidel Castro, and he lived until he was 90 because he has the support of the revolutionary people of Cuba. He has the support of the revolutionary people. They refused to let US imperialism assassinate that man. They tried, over 600 documented cases. They tried. They just weren't able to do it. They tried to poison his food. They tried to do a number of things. And I feel that Kwame Nkrumah was poisoned. That's why I believe he died. How is he healthy in 1969, and in 1970 his health just deteriorated? And even the militants in the Democratic Party of Guinea, which were taking care of him at that time, they know that because of the circumstances, because Guinea was under assault, they were trying to overthrow the government of the PDG in Sekou Touré in Guinea and assassinate Kwame Nkrumah in the process. All of that was happening. They were under so much pressure, they weren't able to ensure and put the emphasis on ensuring that all of the people cooking for Kwame Nkrumah were people that could be trusted. He had a trusted chef, and that chef died mysteriously in 1968. Then all these other people start cooking for him, and now all of a sudden he's so sick he can't even stand up, and then he's dead. None of this is an accident. All of this is coordinated by our enemies. They don't believe in, I mean, you can believe whatever you want, but I'm just telling you, our enemies are not going to say, well, let's see, the revolutionaries are organizing to take our power from us. We'll just hold some crystals and hope everything works. We'll just pray. They don't do that. That's what they give us to do. That's what they left for us to do. I'll just hold these crystals. I'll just light some candles and I'll just pray on it. And maybe the revolutionaries will go. No, they organize and they kill us. They destroy us. We're the ones that sit there with the prayer and the candles and no organization. No organization. So Malcolm's legacy and his you might think, yeah, he's just making fun. Well, some of us need to be made fun of. We really do. We need to be made fun of because it's a joke. It's a joke the way we're living our lives today. Sitting up here talking like we're down for justice, and the minute any effort is required for us to do the slightest thing where we might potentially lose a fingernail, we're out. We're done. We can't do it. Can't do it. It's too much. Can't do it. I mean, that's playing games. You should be made fun of if that's what you're doing. So, those of you that are serious, you know who you are. We ain't talking about you. We're talking about all the fronters, the posers, all the people sitting there talking about the celebrities and I don't give a damn what Ice Cube is doing I don't care if I hope the next 30 shows Dave Chappelle does, somebody runs up on the stage and attacks him. He should get attacked because he's doing nothing to advance our people's collective condition. He said it himself in his last Netflix series. He opened it. If you look at it, just look at the beginning. He told you who he was in the first 5 seconds of his presentation. I'm a millionaire, you all. That's what he said. As soon as he opened his mouth, that's what he said. And why? What's the point of saying that? It's to make the point that I'm not like you. I'm not in your situation. I have a situation that rises me above that. Okay, you're right. You have established the class distinction. I am a working class Pan-African revolutionary, and you're a petty bourgeoisie Negro court jester clown for the capitalist system. So why the hell am I going to focus my attention on who runs on stage against you? I don't care. I couldn't care less about any of that. I want to talk about Sundiata Acoli getting released after 40 plus years of prison at 85 years old, and why most of us don't even have a clue who Sundiata Acoli is. We know Dave Chappelle though, but we know a clown and a jester, but we don't know a revolutionary who gave his life, 40 plus years of his life for you and me. And we don't even have enough integrity to at least know who the man is, at least write him a letter, at least do something to honor his work and carry it forward. That's why we talk like this, because we have a right to talk like this. That's how we need to talk. So Malcolm's uncompromising push for African dignity influenced future generations. There's no question the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee was heavily influenced by Malcolm X and his ideas. So much so that they moved from being predominantly influenced by Dr. Martin Luther King and the philosophy of the Southern Baptist preachers to being influenced by African nationalism. And that's why many of them went on to be active participants in the Pan-African movement. A number of SNCC organizers ended up in the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. We can name them. There's a number of them, not just Kwame Ture, formerly Stokely Carmichael, Bob Brown, who founded the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party, and before that was a SNCC member, and is still active in the All-African People's Revolutionary Party, GC. Sekou Neblet, who was the field marshal for the Black Panther Party, who has been in the APRP for its entire existence and lives in Ghana, and I've gone and stayed at his house many times as my big brother. There are a number of people like that. Mukasa Dada, who I just spoke to and gave an interview. If you want to see it, it's on Hood Communist, who was a SNCC organizer, who was responsible for putting his life on the line for the vote, you all. And in the interview I gave with him a couple weeks ago, said the vote is worthless. But you don't want to listen to the person who put their life on the line. You want to listen to Obama. You want to listen to Kamala Harris and Mickey and Skippy, Mickey Mouse and Skippy. Their opinions are what we value. We don't value the people who paid the price and know what they're talking about this stuff. We don't value that. So Malcolm influenced that. And you know, if you study anything Huey P. Newton wrote, you know that Malcolm X was, along with Frantz Fanon, Che Guevara, and others, was the primary influence in the Black Panther Party, the Revolutionary Action Movement. The Republic of New Africa named Malcolm X their president in what they call after you die, right? They named him that. And they named his wife, sister, the late Dr. Betty Shabazz, as provisional president of the Republic of New Africa. So Malcolm's influence on us since his death is irrefutable. They could kill the man, as Huey P. Newton said, you could kill the man, but you can't kill his spirit. And Malcolm's spirit is stronger today than it was when he was alive. Stronger today than it was when he was alive. So there's no question about his legacy. And that's important because a lot of us think, well, don't do that work because they're going to kill you. You can get killed walking out your house. You putting stuff in your body that's killing you. I told you the other week, I'm sitting there, I love my sister, but she's going to preach to me about the COVID vaccine. And she eats any and everything, eats all the garbage on the earth and has for years and drinks all the garbage on the earth. And now you're going to preach to me about health in 2022. And for the last 30 years of my healthy lifestyle, you talked to me like you thought I was insane. So we just, the way we act, y'all, just makes no sense. So we have to grow up and stop acting that way. It's time, y'all. The time is now for us to get busy. Okay, so, if we look at the contributions Malcolm made, it's now impossible for us to go backwards on this question of Africa and Pan-Africanism. We can't go backwards. I don't care how many of y'all buy into this lie. Well, I'm a Native American. My family's been here for thousands of years in the Western Hemisphere. Oh, well, you paid the white corporation whatever you paid them for your DNA report. Yes, I did. Well, let's see it. Well, I can't find it. That's what people keep telling me when they say that. They're Native American. I'm like, yeah, you can find it. It's just that when you see it, it's going to say that you're from somewhere in Africa, and you don't want to, that blows your whole scam up. So you don't want to show nobody that. Because I've seen it from indigenous people. They've showed it to me, and it shows that they were in this hemisphere thousands of years ago. Yours does not show that because you were not here thousands of years ago. You might have had some ancestors who visited here. No question, that happened. Trade happened all over the world from everywhere. But you were not here. You were not living here. You were not based here. You are African. And I'm saying that not because, I'm trying to get people to want to accept something that we're saying. Myself, I don't even want, if you don't want to be African, I don't personally, if it were left, the good thing is not left up to me. But if it were left to me, I wouldn't even want you. Like, people get upset with me because I want to go to Africa. They want to make money. Somebody was saying the other day, they want to make some money. They want to go to Africa. Could I help them figure out how to go there cheaply? And I'm like, nope, I can't help you. Why not? Because I don't want you to go. Keep that foolishness here where it belongs. The indigenous people will wipe it out here. We'll help them. But we don't need to expand it to Africa more than it's already be expanded. Keep your lazy, selfish behind here. We don't need you over there until you wake up. And I don't have a problem saying that. So we can't go backward on that. All we can do is go forward. So my call to you is don't be shy in calling people African. Don't say African American. Don't even say it. It don't even make no sense. It's like KRS One said. It's like saying Jewish Hitlers. It makes no sense at all. So stop saying that. Why are you saying that? You get mad when we say, well, you're saying that because you want to fit in. You want to fit in with the master's empire. Well, what other reason do you have? Well, we built this country. We built, if you built your house and the house was burning, would you gonna sit your behind in the house while it burns down around you because you built it? No, you'd get out. You'd get out. We built the slave plantations. So you would stay there because you built it? A lot of us are in prison. You stay there because we do all the work. And that logic is so absurd. Our labor was exploited to build this country, yes. But the wealth that we need is not here. So if you're arguing that, well, I'm committed to America because we built this country, you're not fooling me. What you're really saying is that this is a powerful empire and I want my piece of it. I don't care how exploitative it is to the rest of the world. I want my piece of it. That's really what you're saying. You may not know that's what you're saying, but you ain't fooling us. We know that's what you're saying. And we're challenging that. And at one point, we'll be strong enough to do more than challenge it. When we get strong enough to seize power, we're not going to forget whose side you were on. When we seize power, we're not going to forget whose side you were on. So we just want to say that Malcolm helped strengthen the vision for African unity. And he did that. And that work is why they killed him. That's why he was killed. That's why Kwame Nkrumah was killed. That's why Che Guevara, Thomas Sankara, Muammar Gaddafi, that's why they were killed. That's why Assata Shakur was dogged and forced to flee and go to Cuba. That's why the Black Panther Party was destroyed. That's why the Democratic Party of Guinea was attacked. The African Party for Independence of Guinea-Bissau was attacked by the police just a week or so ago. That's why that's why Amilcar Cabral was assassinated, Patrice Lumumba, Maurice Mapolo, Brother Akoto. That's why they were killed. That's what happened to those people. That's why Quito was overthrown in Mali. That's why Walter Rodney was assassinated. That's why all of this happened. The 33 Black Panthers that were killed and murdered. That's why that happened. That's why Sundiata Acoli was incarcerated. Mutulu Shakur, Jamil Abdullah Alameen is still there. That's why Leonard Peltier, the great American Indian movement, organizer is still in prison 40 plus years himself. That's the reason why all of that is happening, because they know that we are not going to stop until we get what rightfully belongs to us. And if you want to know anything about Malcolm and African Liberation Day, it's that we are not people that give up. We got to remember who we are. We are so weak now. Oh, it's too hot outside. We were picking cotton in weather a lot worse than that, not that long ago. Now we can't even stand in it. Got a cold drink in your hand, air conditioner in your car and house, and you can't handle it for 5 minutes. We got work to do, you all. That's how we honor Malcolm, is by doing that work. So we thank you all so very much for being here. We hope that you come back next week, and we're going to continue this focus on African Liberation Day, May 22nd, 45. We really will work hard to get the technical problems out so we can be on all of our usual platforms. So thank you for bearing with us on that. The enemy is working hard against us. But next week, we're going to talk about the African Liberation Day theme, a portion of it. The theme is preparing for a leap forward towards worldwide Pan-African unity. But we're going to talk about neo-colonialism next week. We're going to talk about what is neo-colonialism? How does it work? How is it important for all of us wherever we live in 2022? And why is it very important that we eliminate it? So you don't want to miss that. You want to join in. That's why it's a critical part of our theme for this year. Continue to go to our shop and buy the clothes, support revolutionary African organizations. Don't go to Macy's and Target and that's all you do. Support our people that are producing clothing. It's good quality clothing. I've got 4 pieces of clothing I've ordered from there. Very good stuff. Order it. The money goes to the struggle. Go to the AAPRP-intl.org site and sign up to join the APRP. Continue to do that. Go to betterworld.me and tell people that if they weren't able to watch today on Facebook, which they weren't, the video will be up in 30 minutes on a betterworld.me. All the videos are there, so you can always watch there. And Hood Communist, which I'm an editor for, we have we had a wonderful discussion this past Thursday about how global warming or climate change is impacting the African masses. And we had a live read of the article written by a comrade in Nigeria about global warming and climate change. So check out Hood Communist new articles every Thursday. All of our programs are on the bottom there. Check them out on your screen. Support these programs, Revolutionary African Voices. And again, mark your calendar for May 24th, 25th, African Liberation Day virtual program. We're going to have a program, a panel discussion of all of our sibling liberation movements on the ground, on the continent. You really want to understand what we're doing. If the APRP ain't doing nothing, well, tune in May 24th and you can find out how wrong you are, because you'll be able to see the work that we're doing on the ground to liberate Africa. Those of you, well, Africa ain't never going to be free. Tune in and you'll find out the work that we're doing. And then the 25th, we're going to have a live stream from the African Liberation Day March and Rally in Guinea-Bissau from the PAIGC, our sibling party there, party of Amilcar Cabral, one of our ideologues and co-founders of the AAPRP, as well as the PAIGC and MPLA, the Popular Movement for Liberation of Angola. So check it out. And we have African Liberation Day on the ground throughout Africa. If you want to know, reach out to our website. We can tell you more about that. I still encourage you to buy my book, A Guide for Organized Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. And with that, we will close today. We appreciate you all. And we want to say forward ever. We love everybody out here. We love all the Africans, all the indigenous people that give us so much love on this program, all of the genuine European accomplices. I'm not talking about some of y'all that are really really sick people, but the genuine European accomplices. We appreciate you. We appreciate our Asian allied family members. We appreciate everybody. We even appreciate the police, because your constant sabotage tells us that we are doing the right thing. And all it does is give us more energy to continue to fight even stronger. So stay strong, you all. Don't just talk about Malcolm, live Malcolm. Forward ever, backwards never. Always stay clever in any endeavor. One unified socialist Africa. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening.